BitSwap is the hottest new way to trade tokens. Crawling all the top decentralized exchanges, BitSwap will get you the very best price and value for your trades. BitSwap is changing the game. Try it now at bitswapdex.com.
Welcome to Rice TVX. On today's Rice Report, I am joined by Lynette Zang, who is the Chief Market Analyst at ITM Trading. Lynette has been on the show several times before, and I will have links down below and above for that playlist that I created with all of her previous appearances. If you haven't seen those, I definitely encourage you to check that playlist out. Before we get into it, make sure you visit ricetvx.com and sign up for my mailing list so you never miss an update or new Rice TVX content. Plus, you can find my social media links, contact information, get Rice TVX merch coming soon via the shop, and more. If this is your first time ever watching any of my videos, check out and explore my channels. Make sure you subscribe to Rice TVX and Rice TVX 2. Both can be found on YouTube. And hit the notification bell to get alerted to new videos. Also, you can follow me on Odyssey and Library, where I have my full catalog of videos plus extra content. And you can also find Rice TVX on BitChute. If you want to support Rice TVX and what I do directly, I have my PayPal, Cash App, plus my cryptocurrency addresses via my Cointree link below in the video description. You can also join my Patreon channel, where you will get early access to some of my videos, exclusive content, and more, with 4 different levels of membership, all offering something different. If you are looking to purchase and invest in precious metals, gold and silver are both good safe haven assets to hedge against the financial collapse we are experiencing. Check out Money Metals Exchange. I partnered up with them and you can get a free ½ ounce of silver. Visit moneymetals.com, be a first-time buyer, purchase a minimum of $100, and use the promo code RICE. You get a free ½ ounce of silver, and it's another way to support the channel. I will include links down below for everything I just mentioned, as well as everything I talk about on today's show. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor and pleasure of being joined by a previous guest who's been on the show several times, and I do have a playlist down below so you can check out the ITM Trading Lynette Zang playlist. But today, I am joined by the Chief Market Analyst from ITM Trading, Miss Lynette Zang. Lynette, thank you for coming on the show today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Chris. I love coming here.
And I appreciate you accepting my invitation. And so the last 3 conversations I think we've had, is either the last 2 or 3. We had Pimpy from Pimpy's Investment Chat join us, and we'll get him on the next one. I was trying to get him scheduled for a solo conversation with you, because it's always good when we can have one-on-one time. Sometimes it's harder to have a conversation with more than one person, especially when we're all excited about what we're talking about.
True.
So, and it's a crazy world that we are living in, and so much stuff has happened since me and you have talked. Really what I would like to do, I'm going to have links down below for everything we're talking about. And if people who are watching this aren't familiar with you, I definitely encourage people to go over to ITM Trading's YouTube channel. I'll be sharing this information here throughout the video. Her mantra is food, water, shelter, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, and community. I've been following Lynette for a long time, and she's one of the best as far as being able to explain economics and what's going on from a very logical perspective, because Lynette, your research is just impeccable, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you spending most of your time doing that and sharing it with us.
It's true. I spend a lot of time reading and researching and digging. I think of myself like a little ferret, really, just kind of keep digging and digging.
Well, you're one of the best, and you really are. And that's one of the reasons why I feel very fortunate to be able to have these conversations. So ultimately, what I'd like to get from you today is your thoughts on the short to midterm, and what things people can do to prepare. Because before we were recording, you were mentioning that gold and silver are good ways to preserve your wealth, but it's not going to be what's necessarily 100% going to get you through what we think is coming. And so I'd like to kind of get into that. I don't know if you want to start with because I'm really confused with where everything's going as far as, are we heading into like a high inflation, hyperinflation period? Are we going into a deflationary period? Disinflation, stagflation. They're talking about verge of contraction. 40% of Americans have serious financial problems, supply chain issues, which may cause food shortages. We got the crazy repo markets going on. And then top all that off, we have what they're not calling inside trading, which is inside trading being done by the Federal Reserve, who are supposed to technically be public servants in some capacity.
Well, goodness gracious, if Congress can do insider trading and then impact what they're buying, I guess it's okay if the Fed does it.
It's just,
they do it all over the place, and actually, when you're talking about all of the different inflations, deflation, stagflation, etc., what I think people really need to understand is that they're just different sides of the same coin. Because when we go into deflation, and really think about deflation, if you have an amount of money and prices go down, that doesn't hurt you. That helps you because you can buy more goods with the same amount of money. On the other side of that, the only way to fight deflation is with inflation.
Right.
That's the only way to fight it.
Right. No, I totally agree. And so I've had a friend of mine, it's a guy named Ben Armstrong. He's got a channel called BitBoy Crypto, and his channel has grown to the point he's got over 1.3 million subscribers. And I go on his show generally weekly. He has a kind of a roundtable thing called Around the Blockchain, where people discuss cryptocurrency news. And he's been having some supposed insider information, talking about us going into a deflationary event, pulling out dollars to strengthen the dollar, and the rest of the world is going to go along with this because the US dollar is the world reserve currency. I've argued about it losing its world reserve currency status, and not that China or the yuan would get it. I think it would be something like you said, like an SDR, where you're having a basket of different fiat currencies. But when he was talking about this, he's saying, well, ultimately it will strengthen the dollar and it will crash the stock market.
So let's look at that. Let's look at that first piece, what strengthening the dollar is, because really all of this wordsmithing is about confusing people so they don't realize what's really happening.
Well, that's where I'm getting, Lynette. That's why I was saying earlier, I'm getting confused by all of this stuff, because what I thought was going to happen and us going into like a high inflation, hyperinflation period because of all this money printing and everything that's going on in the rest of the world in their de-dollarization phase, I really was thinking that we were going to be going towards this hyperinflation. And now it's like there's all these arguments going towards something different. And I know we're in unknown territory.
Well, we are and we're not. I mean, and what I mean by that is history has a tendency to repeat. And one of the things that repeats is that everybody thinks that this time is different, when in reality, it really isn't different. Yes, we have more advanced technology, but we're in essence doing the same thing. So let's just kind of go back to how you value any currency, right?
Okay.
Because that's really when they say a strong dollar or a weak dollar, and that's what you hear, what they're really referring to is that currency, that fiat currency, government-based currency, against another government-based currency. And when they're talking, right? And so, yeah, you'll see them go up and down. But regardless of the currency, because that only impacts you and me if we're traveling overseas, and how many people are doing that these days, right?
Right.
What really is the way to value a currency strongly, in my opinion, for the masses, period, end of for anybody, period, end of discussion, is how much that currency will buy. And this morning I was at the Federal Reserve Education Department, the FRED, FRED, anybody can go in there, and in the search bar, put purchasing power, and you'll see the purchasing power of the consumer dollar, which really officially First of all, the purchasing power has been dropping faster than I've ever seen in my entire career. And I've been in the industry since 1986 and in banking since way before that, but as a stockbroker, et cetera. And I started studying currencies and currency life cycles in 1987. So what really matters to all of us is how much you can buy with that dollar.
Right.
So all of that is camouflage for what's really happening, which is a steady, just put in purchasing power in there.
Right here in the
In the search bar, and you'll see.
Purchasing power
Of the consumer dollar, if you need to do it all the way. I kind of have my links that take me there.
That's no problem. I appreciate you saying this because I want people to be able to do their own research.
100%. I don't think anybody should take anybody's word for anything. Did you put what did it come up with?
It came up with this particular list.
Yeah, that one. The top
first one?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the purchasing power of the consumer. Yeah, there you go. So this is since 1913.
Since the Federal Reserve got into their position of power.
Exactly. And what I'd like you to notice, since we're doing this is one of my very favorite charts. You can see that big, huge 50% drop off right when the Federal Reserve came into play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when they legalized the Federal Reserve, up to that point, a 20th of an ounce of gold, or a silver dollar actually, supported a dollar, right? It backed a dollar. But once they instituted the Federal Reserve and legalized it, then it was 2.4 times, which is why you see that 50% drop off, because they basically said they could print 2.4 times the number of dollars than was held in deep storage. So that was a pretty fast runoff. Yeah. Now, why didn't and then that took us into the roaring 20s, but why didn't anybody notice? Because there were a lot more dollars out there. The industrialists were playing in the stock market. The stock market was going up, but the general population felt wealthier by the 20s, and then they started to participate in the stock market after, in 1927, the Federal Reserve was granted a unlimited charter. Typically up to this point, it was a 15 to 20 year charter that the central banks had. But so in 1927, the Fed had an unlimited charter, which is why it's still in power today.
Okay.
And the wealthy industrialists in 1928 started taking their profits and getting out of the markets, which was just as the general public really started to go into those markets. Once there was enough money out and enough wealthy money out, I should say, and enough inexperienced, naive money in, then all of a sudden it became too expensive to carry. Lots of credit was given. So lots of debt was given, lots of margin, and then boom, they cut that off.
Mm-hmm.
And you had the 1929 crash.
Yeah, now since you said that, the 1929 crash, a lot of people are comparing what we will be experiencing to that and worse.
Yes, I think it'll be worse. I think it'll be much worse. And the reason why it is a good comparison is because, number one, that was the beginning of this trend cycle. That was really the beginning of us going off a gold standard. And what a gold standard really does, people don't understand this, but what a gold standard, yes?
You were saying that took us off, we basically got out the gold standard in the 30s.
We began the transition.
Okay, because that's at the same time period when they actually made the U.S. citizens sell their gold to the United States because of the financial situation.
Correct, because the gold, if you as a citizen own gold and you don't like the way the government is running the country, you just go into any bank and convert your dollars into gold when we were on the gold standard, right? That pulled the gold out of the system and created more restrictions around what the government could do.
All right.
really like that? No.
No, not at
Want-
all.
And if they tax you on a gold standard, you know about it. And you might not agree to it. So this is why we really had to go to a fiat system. Plus, for corporations, they wanted to pay as little as possible. They wanted to pay you less. But if you were used to getting $10 an hour, you're not going to settle for $5 an hour. However, in all of those cases between the government and their desire to tax and spend, and the corporations and their desire to pay less and less, so we could create this income and wealth inequality,
Yeah.
right? They took us on to this fiat standard. Could they have done that all the way overnight? No, because the population would have rebelled.
100%.
Right. So they had to do it in a very sneaky way. And over time, where we went from 100% backing to 40% backing to no backing, right? That's what happened over time. Would you pull that back up again, please? That chart?
Yeah, no problem.
Chart? Okay. Now you see on the bottom where you have those two shades of blue?
Yeah, underneath at the very, where it kind of gives.
And there's that little bar. Can you move that little bar for me, please?
This bar?
I can't see the screen, it's too far away.
Yeah,
But you see where there's like two little rectangles? No. Edgar,
yes.
if there. Okay, so grab that rectangle and start moving it to the right. It's the grayed out. You were in the right place.
I'm moving
Yeah,
something.
there you go.
Yeah, I'm moving it. Where do we move it to?
Here, let go of it for a second. Let's just make sure because you're in the right place. Yeah. Okay. So I can't see the date there.
We're at 19. Well, it's saying this is 65.
Perfect. Okay, for just a second.
Ish. Actually, this is going back. Apparently, I'm sorry. This is going back like before. This looks like 1940. It's really weird the way that it's showing on how it's doing this.
What do you mean?
As far as like trying to get the precise time, it doesn't. I'm at around 1955 to 2020.
That's fine. That's fine for the moment, because I think it's really obvious. This is how much you could buy with the dollars, and so this is the inflation which is baked into the cake, which is what makes this really obvious. So nominally, right? In other words, based on numbers, the value of your house, the value of stocks, the value of this and that looks like it's going up because it takes more dollars to buy the same thing. But in reality, what it is that it is the purchasing power that is going down. And just since 1971, when our government concluded the handing over of control of inflation to central banks, we've lost 98% of the value there. But can you do that same thing and get us current? Because you see how it kind of looks like everything flattens out? It's because there's not much purchasing power left.
Yeah, it definitely does. So I guess, going into like let's see here.
Let's take it real current, because there's 2008. Okay.
Here we are to about 2000 to 2020, maybe 2001 to 2021.
Yeah, to 2021. The most current thing I think was 1013. So, about a week ago ish when they updated it.
Well, September of 2021. Not sure what date, but yeah.
Yeah. So, but you can see that, is it really the stock market going up or is it the currency going down? And when they talk about a strong dollar, they're not talking about this, because every currency is doing this. Every single flipping one. And I might point out, is there a zero on that left-hand scale?
When you say left-hand scale,
under the Fred, see where it says Fred?
Up here?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it goes down to 35.
Okay. So what that actually means is 3 out of the original dollar, they're officially, so it's worse, but officially there's 3.5 cents left
per dollar.
purchasing power out of the original dollar officially, according to the Federal Reserve.
See, I never knew about this tool that you're showing about
Oh my
going
God.
into, because yeah, like you were saying, if you go back further out, it looks like it's flattened out. But when you go into a smaller time frame, into our recent, you could totally see this. And that's the hidden tax that people are calling, the inflation. Now, something that you just said too, you mentioned the stock market going up. And I'm going to use an example that most people can relate to, because not everybody's invested into the stock markets, but a lot of people own homes.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say you own a home that in 2019 was valued at $200,000. That home may be valued at a higher rate now. And some of these people may think that they're actually wealthier because their house is worth more. But their house isn't, it's worth more in dollars, but it's not worth more in purchasing power of the dollars. And that's not what people are, that's the thing that people are missing is, so then the way that you're explaining this, it makes no sense that they could try to pull dollars out of circulation and strengthen the dollar and reverse this trend, because this trend has never reversed since 1913.
Voila! This is the real trend of what's going on, period. And it is a very negative trend. There is virtually no purchasing power left. That's why we had to go to negative rates, because they've gotten all the purchasing power out of the currency. Now they're attacking principal. And once we go to a CBDC, that then becomes so much easier to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to see if we had time to see if there was any reason to bring up the CBDCs and the digital currencies, because I figured that they were going to have some sort of, they're going to have a use case. And I even tightened this Fred list up from January of 2008 to where we are today. And even just seeing it from that shorter of a time span, when we know what happened in 2008, because now we've been put on life support because of the crash.
I said it. The system died in 2008. I don't give a crap what anybody says.
Yeah, now you talk about zombie banks and everything being on life support.
Exactly. So let's talk about that for a minute, okay? Because here's gold and silver physical. You can see it, you can hear it. It's been real money forever, but it is private, it is decentralized, and according to the Bank for International Settlements, it is the only financial asset that runs no counterparty risk. The only one. They didn't say dollars and gold. They didn't say crypto and gold. They said the only financial asset that runs no counterparty risk. Further than that, they say, the Bank for International Settlements says that gold held at home runs no political risk. It's invisible. So this is money that the governments and the central banks can't really control. They can control how you perceive it, which is why they manipulate the price.
Yeah.
But you have both physical gold and silver used across the entire global economy, every single area, period, end of discussion.
So what I was going to ask you, you mentioned gold, you just said silver. So would silver be in that same category by the Bank for International Settlements as what you mentioned gold is, or is silver in a different category?
Gold is the primary currency metal. Silver is the secondary currency metal. And that's because gold meets all the criteria to be a good currency. You know, it's divisible without any loss, but both of them are monetary metals. So the biz really only talks about gold, or at least this one report where they were talking about currency reserves.
Okay.
It's an excellent report. They did it in, I think, 2019. And this was from their conclusions. So I like both, but I like them for different reasons, right? And I own both, but I own them for different reasons.
Do you mind explaining what those different reasons are?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, we're talking about the mantra, right? Silver for me is about barterability, because, and in any form, gold and silver are monetary at its base. So if I need to put a tank of gas in the car, or I need to buy some food or something like that, I'm going to use my silver, right?
Something small, nothing that's costing a great deal of money.
Correct. Or it's not costing money. This is where we get tied up in numbers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's the value. Okay. Because it's got a broad base of value, you have a broad base of utility, rather, you have the broadest base of buyers in physical form, right?
Okay.
For gold, I like that as wealth preservation. So if I owned a bunch of stocks, which I do not anymore, and I'm an ex-stockbroker, so I mean, I understand it, and and I'm not in it. And no, I don't care that I lost any run, because when this puppy is over, you're not going to be able to catch a falling knife. It's gonna end very quickly. So I don't care. I showed you the real trend, and right. So on the other side of this, I want to maintain my purchasing power, and that's what gold is about on a number of levels. So if I had a stock portfolio, then a good insurance is to have the right amount of gold to cover that. So if that stock portfolio goes to zero, this goes up, and it does it because this is what they reset the whole currency against. At least they've done it over 4,800 times.
Right.
And they haven't revalued it against anything else ever, ever, ever. Could this time be different? Well, I suppose so, but you tell me what the alternative is.
Usually history repeats itself. There's nothing new under the sun.
Exactly. Additionally, right now, we know all of those assets are overvalued, whether they're stocks or certainly bonds and real estate, right? But that won't stay that way forever. It will get, just like it did in 29, it will get too expensive to maintain that. Or, and this is what I think is actually going to be the death knell, confidence in these powers that be that are manipulating everything and trading for their benefit, not yours, and using your tax dollars while getting corporate lobbyists into the system that pay billions of dollars to have what they want become law and regulation or deregulation, as it may be, right? So we're paying for all of this, but we're also the ones that take it in the shorts on the other side of it. This protects you from that, because I don't know of anything else that is truly decentralized and truly private and doesn't require any energy or anybody else. You hold it, you own it, it's had value for thousands and thousands and thousands of years.
So for anybody who watches from my channel, who's like, well, what about Bitcoin or what about cryptocurrency? We're not even going to get into it. What you can do is check out the playlist, because the playlist we've had several conversations about cryptocurrencies versus precious metals and the use of cryptocurrencies in our plenty of conversations that we've had over the past 3 years. So I definitely encourage people to check those videos out.
Yes, but I would like to say, and if you put the purchasing, well, you don't have to put that back up.
I don't mind. I got it. I got it all ready to go.
Okay, so look at 2009. Could you point out 2009? Because that's when they started quantitative easing, which is massive, fast money printing, and in March. And that was also the same January is when Bitcoin came out.
January 2009, yes, because the white paper came out on Halloween of 2008, which was the abstract about it, and then the first block, the Genesis block, was mined on January the 3rd.
Yes, the NSA white paper on how to create a mint, in other words, how to create these cryptocurrencies, came out in 1996.
NSA white papers. This is not something I've not seen before. You said in what year?
1990. I'm pretty sure it was 1996.
Okay. Do you know what the white paper was from NSA? You mentioned minting.
It was something like how to make a mint, which was how to develop a cryptocurrency.
Well, speaking of all that,
something like that, but I can send you the link too.
You don't need to comment on this. I'll send you a link, but I did an interview about a month ago with Bernard von Nothaus from the Liberty Dollar. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know what you don't have to comment, but I did do an interesting interview with that guy.
and what
Because
do
I
you want
thought
to say about it? Yeah, go ahead.
I just thought he had an interesting story. You know, it was kind of a precursor to Bitcoin in a sense, but doing it in a physical way with trying to use gold and silver and other precious metals.
Is that the one that got shut down?
Yeah, it was the Liberty Dollar.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately, because he was very specific about the terminologies he was using. So, what somebody would consider to be notes or something like that were actually warehouse receipts. So, the FBI came in and raided the facility and took all the precious metals, which was like hundreds of tons, I believe. I can't remember the exact figure.
Mhm.
But ultimately, it was all returned back to the owners because the warehouse receipts. It was a really interesting idea. He's supposed to be relaunching it in some capacities, but when you mentioned the whole Satoshi thing, Bernard von Nothaus, I just think he's, regardless of what you think of him as an individual, that action, I feel like inspired a lot.
Well, it did, but also it showed you a lot. And what it showed you, and we're witnessing it now, it's really interesting, is that a central bank is not going to allow a private enterprise to come in and take over their money monopoly. Now, they will sit back on any innovation, which is what we've seen. So, and allow it to develop and allow them to develop the comfort of the markets for it. So,
Okay.
when you're talking about the cryptocurrencies, that's exactly what we've seen. But what makes this even more interesting is China coming out with their CBDC,
Yeah.
right? And at first saying, oh, yeah, well, our CBDC can live right alongside of, the other cryptocurrencies from Tencent, et cetera. And yeah, that was, I think, in March of this year. And what did they do? They just recently banned any crypto exchanges, all of them.
Mining and all that. Yeah, but I got a theory about that though too. I feel like that was China's way of distributing what they're doing around the world instead of having it all just in China. Because also when it came to the Bitcoin mining, they were at that Three Gorge area, which had a lot of problems. So to me, it was like China infiltrating other countries
I
and
agree.
and utilizing other countries because they're talking about the United States taking over the hash rate control, but it may be in the United States, but the ownership of the SID mining facilities aren't necessarily US based or owned.
Right.
And a lot of them are Chinese owned or partnered up or Chinese investors. So to me, they just took everything out of their own country and just distributed it around the world.
Well, and let's add a little bit to that because what they're also doing now is forcing US companies that are operating in China, like, oh, say, McDonald's, they are forcing them to set up the system to accept the yuan by the Olympics or whatever big
Yeah.
event is coming up.
Yeah, that's when they're supposed to be
So,
testing it out for the big public rollout is with the Olympics because they've been doing it on a small level of testing with people, but the money that is received, and I don't know that it's a CBDC. I think it's the digital yuan. So I think
well,
there's
that's
two.
this.
Well, I think they're two separate entities. I don't know that they are one and of the same. I don't know. I was
You
thinking the
don't think that the
CBDCs.
Chinese government and the Chinese central bank are two completely separate entities?
No. I'm just saying.
Wonder what
I
that
don't think
means
it's the
for it.
same coin. I think they have two. They're going to have two separate coins out. I don't think it'll all be under. I think they'll have a CBDC coin, which is
Write
your.
that down. I'm gonna look at that.
And I could be wrong, but I don't see people spending CBDCs for regular purchases. I see them spending the digital yuan. So I look at the CBDCs as
Well,
kind of being like a smaller version of an SDR, just for
I could
more
be wrong.
localized.
I could be wrong, and I don't think that
I
the
could be wrong too.
yuan represent. Well, I'm going to look at it. You look at it. We'll look at it because we never want to give misinformation.
Right.
Okay, but I think it's one and the same.
Okay. It might be. It very well may
I
be.
think it's one and the same. I mean, I haven't seen anything else. It might be kind of because in China they have the renminbi and the yuan, but it's the same thing. They just have two different names
Yeah,
for
no,
it.
I will definitely be looking into it because I do think that there's going to be a difference, and also because you also are going to have localized coins as well. I don't know if you heard about Miami doing like the launch of the Miami coin. So I think we'll start seeing kind of reverting back in a weird way to the days when central banking was very sparse and some of those contracts ran out, and we had different banks with different regional monies that weren't necessarily connected to the nation per se. They were more connected to a
Right.
local bank or a local
Local.
area.
Right. And we will get very local, and it is a way for a local government to stimulate the economy if they can create their own money source and then just have it circulate locally.
Yeah, it's an
Right.
interesting concept.
Well, it's an interesting concept, and it's also going to be interesting to see how much of any of this that the central banks actually allow. Because they don't, okay, well, yeah, we've had a good run. Here you go.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
I know they're
it
not going to
makes
give
no
this up
sense.
without a fight.
No,
They
they are
definitely aren't.
not. And that's where we are right now, is the battle has begun. But, I would also want to say to you, pointing out what's been happening to prices, they're blaming it on the supply chain, and that certainly has something to do with it. But it's really about the money printing. And even though I do not have technical confirmation yet, so I want to be really, really clear about that.
Okay.
My head, my heart, and my gut is telling me that we have already entered the hyperinflationary phase. Because honestly, well, we are in a melt up in fiat money asset prices, right?
Right.
But when I look at what's happening, they want you to stay in the system. They want you and your wealth to be easily taken away. And then who are you going to call?
Ghostbusters.
Exactly.
That's what you're going to call.
That's who you're going to call. Ghostbusters, money busters.
You mentioned the supply chain. Why do you think that there are I don't know if they're called tanker ships, what the container ships, I don't know what the specific title for them is, but
Containers.
why do you think that there are so many of these sitting, waiting to dock and unload? And it's not because California makes sense with the oil spill. They can make an excuse with that, but South Carolina apparently has the same issue going on, and there's no oil spill. So I'm not.
Well, I
Is it
think
the
a
lack
lot
of
of it,
employees?
I
Is
think
it the
that
fact
has
that
to
these some of these shipping facilities are owned by China? I've heard.
that could be too. But I can remember being a stockbroker in the 80s, and everything was about globalization. Everything was about globalization. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know that this is necessarily going to be a good thing for most people. I mean, a lot of jobs transferred overseas. We used to be the manufacturer, et cetera. So we actually supported it, and it was really more about corporations making more money than it was about what's going to benefit the population.
Right.
Because a corporation could then go to wherever the labor is cheapest. And especially when we agreed, I can't believe this is interesting. It's turning into a China discussion,
I didn't
but
mean for it to be that, but it's wherever it goes.
wherever it goes, but when we allowed the world trade, the WTO allowed China to come in, and we modified the rules for them, tied the currency to the dollar, and you could see that's when all the manufacturing went in, and we had to tie it to the dollar so that US corporations could go up and open up factories in China and know how much their profits were going to be.
Yeah, I know. It's just caring about that bottom line more than anything else, man.
Exactly.
It'd be nice for us to get back to our humanity and start incorporating those aspects in some of our business dealings. And I wanted to be respectful of your time. Do you mind kind of giving me and everybody else a slight summary of what you kind of expect to happen within the next 3 to 6 months? I know it's just kind
3
of
to 6 months. Well, I think prices could definitely continue to go up. I don't think this is transitory at all. I think that
is it good for people to stock up on stuff, or would that be hoarding and bad and taken away from other people?
I suppose it always depends on your definition of hoarding. No, food, water. I mean, think about what happened in March of 2020
Oh
and where
yeah,
you were as an individual. Did you have a problem getting what you needed? Most
some
people
things,
did.
yeah.
Yep.
And
I
and
mean,
and imagine this is going to be a lot worse.
and we're already seeing it. We're seeing prices and availability really dry up. Now we're seeing availability dry up in gold and silver, but we're not seeing prices rise, even though central banks have been gobbling it up like crazy. Gee, why would that be? Well, maybe because a rising gold price is an indication of a failing currency. And maybe because if people saw that, they might start to understand that holding their wealth in a market that they can only convert into dollars is not really in their best interest. And gosh, they might actually buy gold and silver, get it out of the system and invisible, that runs no counterparty risk and runs no political risk, is a
Right.
proven inflation fighter and exactly what you want under adverse conditions, which is why central banks globally, most of them, not all of them, are buying gold. Because at the end of this, when we go into, I see, the next 3 to 6 months is always hard. I mean, technically, I can tell you, I showed you what was happening,
Right.
right? But people they have this short-term vision, and that's what we've also been trained to do. I mean, look at things like TikTok, what's that, 15 seconds or something like that?
Yeah, they're training people to get out of having an attention span, period.
They have been a while because then you're not looking back to see what's happened. But that's where you see the truth of it. And even in the manipulated markets, if you go into stockcharts.com and you do a relative performance chart and you put in gold, silver, and these are contracts, so it's not really the physical, but these are what they can easily manipulate. You put in gold, silver, stocks, bonds, dollars, whatever. And short term, it can look like anything because of the easy manipulation. But you can go back to 2000
Mhm.
when a lot of things started to shift in 2000. If we had more time, we could talk about it. And you will see that both gold and silver has absolutely outperformed, even while being drastically suppressed. If they did not suppress gold and silver, you would see it perform better than Bitcoin or the cryptocurrencies because it has more utility.
Right. And again, I mean, I mentioned this to other people, but some people still have not grasped the fact that there's a disconnect when it comes to how we price gold and silver because it's based off the trading of paper contracts that aren't actually the actual gold and silver, which is why you say you need to own it. You don't need to own these contracts with gold and silver because you don't have that in your possession. So I agree with you when it comes to the manipulation. I mean, I've heard so much about JP Morgan. It's pretty much like almost like a fact of life now that we know that JP Morgan is manipulating the silver market, but yet there's no repercussions for what they're doing.
That's because it benefits. It's this whole group up at the
Yeah,
top.
I
They're
know, I
all
know.
evil. They're all manipulating it, and and we're the ones that take the consequences. And that's not okay with me. And that's why I have that whole mantra: food, water, energy security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, which is probably the single most important thing in there because
Yeah.
we have to come together to get through this mess, and shelter. These are all and I'll tell you something else too. And I kind of classify this under food. But if you have, and I hope nobody does, but if you have a chronic illness, medicine during hyperinflationary events at any amount, no amount of gold or silver, is going to be able to buy you the medicine that you need. So should you I don't consider it hoarding, but I can tell you, March 2020, I could give a lot of people toilet paper and it didn't have a negative impact on me. I could share a lot of food with people and it didn't have a negative impact on me.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't call it hoarding. The government calls it hoarding to put a bad light on it. God forbid you should do that, even while they do that.
Well, that's
Uh,
why I said it like that, because I knew kind of how you would react.
right.
I want, I
Exactly.
wanted, I wanted that LZ reaction. So,
Well,
but before we wrap up things, do you mind kind of giving a little bit of, I guess, I mean, you kind of talked about your mantra, but things that people can do to prepare outside
yeah.
of gold and silver, and then if you want to transition that into what you guys do over at ITM Trading as well.
Okay. Well, food does become the single biggest issue for most people. And so, I encourage everybody to make sure that they are not food poor going into this. Now, I've done gardens. I've also done, dried food, rice and beans, legumes and grains are a complete protein. So,
Yeah,
no matter where you are, you can probably do something like that. Even some seeds, some broccoli sprouting seeds thrown in your freezer. You rinse them off for 3 days, boom, you've got fresh food. You need to have a store of water. And if you're in a place that, like I'm in Arizona and we're in a drought, so I have ponds to catch water. But, there are lots of ways to do that. And security, because desperate people do desperate things and desperate governments do desperate things too.
yeah,
But they make choices they would not otherwise make. So, you want to look at, where do I feel most vulnerable? And then you want to start to plug those holes, but you need to do it as fast as you can because we are very, very far along in this trend cycle. You know, I,
yeah,
so it's critical. At ITM Trading, we are a full service physical gold and silver dealer, but based upon my studies of currencies and currency life cycles, because everything has a life cycle. I guarantee you I'm at a different place in my life at 67 than my granddaughter is at 6,
right.
right? And currencies are really no different than that. So, but you have to be prepared to be as self-sufficient and independent as possible. That's why community is so critical. That's why money was created to begin with, so that that society could specialize. So you'll have different talents and knowledge than I'll have, but we can come together, and together we're a whole lot stronger than an individual. While at ITM Trading, we're working on some things, but we have a strategy that's based upon my studies of things that have happened historically 100% of the time. Because even though I can't guarantee the future, I don't know. I kind of think if something's happened 100% of the time and we're doing the same thing, we're going to get the same kind of results.
Yeah,
So
that definition of insanity.
exactly. So the strategy is basically my strategy and then tweaked for each individual because everybody's circumstance is a little different. That's what we really love to do, is put your goals first, put your best interest first. Don't take our word for anything. That's why in all my work you have all my links. Formulate your own opinion. If it's different than mine, rock and roll hoochie coo. I can't tell you you don't have a good opinion, but I'm data gal, and my opinions are based upon facts that you can verify, not airy fairy, even going to the powers that be. So that's what we do at ITM.
And
And
that's one of the things I
as a
love.
base.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I just said that's why we use real money, gold and silver as a foundation, but you really need all the rest of it.
I agree. And, I mean, again, I just appreciate the fact that, I mean, to back up what I was saying earlier about your research being impeccable and you being able to explain a lot of this financial noise and translate it in a way that people can understand is something that I
Go on.
appreciate. And then the fact that you are saying, here's all the links for everything that I'm talking about. You can fact check me, you can research, you can take this further. You're telling people, asking people, don't believe me, fact check me, and you're providing that information, which I find to be very valuable, because there's not that many people are doing that. A lot of people are just blowing out hot air. They may be saying some good things, but they're not using factual information, proof to back up what they're saying. And I really enjoy that. So that's one of the things I really appreciate about you.
Thank you. Well, we're super keen on education. Definitely. We like people to make educated choices that puts their best interest first. What a concept.
Right. Well, I want to let people know again, links will be down below. If they want to follow you and what you're doing with your urban farming and such, they can go on your Instagram account, which I'll have linked down below. The ITM Trading YouTube channel, make sure you're subscribed, and then itmtrading.com. If you want to contact ITM about strategies, investing in gold and silvers. If you haven't seen any of the previous interviews, as I mentioned, check out the playlist that we did. All the previous interviews, some were just solo like this, and some have Pimpy from Pimpy's Investment Chat, but it's an awesome playlist and a lot of great information. Did you have any final thoughts or anything you wanted to add before we wrap up today's video, Lynette?
Yeah, I mean, people always think that we have all the time in the world, and honestly, we really don't. Again, I'm going to just repeat myself. I cannot technically say that we have entered the hyperinflation. I'm still waiting for some things to confirm, but my head, my heart, and my gut is telling me that we're at the very beginning phases of it, and it's not going away. So you need to not procrastinate. This is not the time to procrastinate.
Real quick, and I didn't mean to ask you another question, but
Go ahead.
When you talk about hyperinflation, and us potentially going into that period, have you, and I'm assuming you have, but I have to ask, have you checked out and compared where we are with graphs and stuff to Venezuela or Zimbabwe?
Of course.
And it looks really similar.
It does look similar, but it's at the very early stages. They're further along. But looking at those other countries, then you will also be able to see what happens to gold. And actually, this coming week, depends on when you release this, but on Tuesday of next week, I'm going to do a whole piece on how gold and silver perform during currency resets.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we're recording this on Thursday, the 21st of October, and it will probably come out on Sunday or Monday. So it'll come out right before that Tuesday video that you're talking about. So I definitely encourage people to check that out. If you can bear with me 1 second, I'm just going to go ahead and wrap up things on my end.
Sure.
But again, ladies and gentlemen, links will be down below for everything we talked about. Make sure you check out that playlist with the previous interviews and conversations with Lynette. And make sure you're checking out the links for ITM Trading's website and YouTube channel, as well as Lynette's Instagram account. If this is your first time watching any of my videos, I do encourage you to check out and explore my channel. Make sure you subscribe. And as always, I encourage you to be the change by practicing change.